Hi everyone, I'm Anna Herod-McGrew, the 4-H Natural Resource Educator from Columbia and Greene Counties. Today we're out here celebrating Earth Day on a nice little nature walk, and I've got some activities that you can do with your family, with your kids, if you guys end up taking a nature walk to celebrate Earth Day. We've got some ID activities, some scavenger hunt ideas, and some other things to keep you occupied in the woods and entertained. Tree ID can be a little bit tricky in spring, which is when Earth Day occurs every year. So if we look around, we'll notice that there are no leaves on most of the trees. Some trees still have needles. They're called evergreen trees. Sometimes they're coniferous if they make cones. The trees that we see without leaves, that dropped their leaves in the fall, they're called deciduous trees. And those are trees that shed their leaves in the fall and then regrow their leaves in spring. But we're just entering that period where those buds are starting to form on those deciduous trees. This is an old oak leaf that fell last fall. So tree ID is a little bit tricky. So the first thing we want to look for, we can identify whether it is a deciduous tree or an evergreen tree. If you look around and you still see green on the tree, it's probably an evergreen tree. If you see a tree that just has very bare branches with lots of leaves like this on the ground, it's a deciduous. And that's our first step in tree ID. So the next thing that we can look for when we're trying to identify trees in springtime is how the branches grow. This can get a little tricky if some branches are broken, but if you start to look up at the canopy, you can start to notice branching patterns of trees. So we've got 3 patterns that we're going to talk about. Some trees have opposite branching, so if you look up their trunk, you're going to notice there's one limb coming off this way, and directly across from it is another limb coming out. And it's going to continue up the tree like that with opposite branching. Some trees have alternate branching, meaning one branch is growing up this way and then a little bit lower one branch is growing out this way. And then some other trees, like this hemlock behind me, have whorled branching. So one's coming out here, one's coming out here, and they kind of grow out in a circular pattern around the tree. So if we're talking about opposite branching, we can keep the term mad horse in the back of our mind. And that stands for maple, ash, dogwood, and horse chestnut, which is not a native species, but one of our opposite branching in this area. Those are pretty much the only trees. There are some smaller shrubs that have opposite branching, but that maple, ash, dogwood, horse chestnut, that mad horse, if you keep that in your mind for opposite branching, most likely if you see a tree with opposite branching, it's going to be one of those few trees that we just listed in that mad horse term. If we think about alternate branching, that's usually our oak trees, our birch trees. Those all have alternate branching. There are a few more in that category, but we can start to break it down by deciding if they are opposite, alternate, or whorled. Whorled trees are usually our hemlock, our white pine. Many more of our evergreens tend to have that whorled branching. So those are some tips on some springtime tree ID. Now, how do we make it fun for kids? Some things you can do is just shout out names of things and see if they can find them in the woods while you're on your nature walk. If you want to get a little more complicated, you can see if you can yell out alternate and see if they can spot a tree that has alternate branching or opposite branching or whorled. Other things you can get a little more basic and just shout out dead leaf or deciduous tree and have them find something on the ground that fell from a deciduous tree or from an evergreen tree. The one thing we never want to do is pick living things. So if you are going to shout out things for your kids to grab, just make sure they're finding things that are dead or downed, already on the ground. But you can shout out colors. You can say, find something green. That's really easy. Find something brown. Another easy one. You can get a little more complicated and start yelling at other colors. But that's kind of the next step. Make sure you know where things are. Kids could get a little bit frustrated. So if you have younger kids and yelling out alternate or opposite or looking for specific kinds of trees is maybe a little above their level, you can do something as simple as printing out a color wheel. You can find these on the internet, print it out. You can even just draw the colors in. You can print a blank one, have them put the colors in, and then take this with you on a nature walk. And upon first examination, when you look around the forest this time of year, it looks like all you're going to see is a little bit of green and mostly brown. But if you start to get kids looking a little bit closer at the forest floor, maybe lifting up some old down logs, you're going to start to find the colors in this wheel, like this acorn that's popped open. This is a nice pinkish red that we can match to our color wheel right here. So this is just a great way to get kids looking a little bit closer at what's around them, finding things that are dead and downed. Remember, we don't want to pick anything living, and seeing if they can match every color on the wheel. And some of these brighter colors are definitely more challenging, but not impossible. The colors are out there. And if you look closely at the bark of a tree, sometimes it has those reds, those oranges, those violets in it. So we just have to look extra close to find all these colors. So if you want to take it one step further and try to actually find the species of the plant or tree you're looking at, a super easy way to do that is download an app called Seek, S-E-E-K. It's made by the same group that makes iNaturalist. And all it is a photo identification app. So what you're going to do is you open the app, this is what it comes up with, it shows our location. Just going to hit that camera button and then hold it up, and you're going to wait until it has the best match possible, and this is giving us a birch. That's their best, it's flashing at us. So we're going to take that picture, it's going to save it. It said you observed a species, most likely sweet birch. And you can add this to your observations, it's going to be stored. If you want to go even further, the app iNaturalist connects these identifications to scientists that are studying the area. So if you find a really cool spring wildflower, a scientist might want to know where that flower is blooming. You can upload that to iNaturalist and actually be part of a scientific study. But if you just want the ID, I recommend Seek. Here are some of those graphics that we talked about in the woods. Here's a simple color wheel that you can use. You can either pull it up on your phone or print it out and use that as a tool for exploration in the forest. And here's a simple scavenger hunt you can take along with you as well. This makes it super easy for kids to start observing things a little more closely in the forest. Rather than IDing things specifically, they can start to listen for birds, look for moss on a log, see how many acorns they can find. And it's a fun tool to see if you can check off all of the things on the scavenger hunt. And maybe try it in a few different areas. If you have a couple trails that you like to go to, see if you can spot these common features in a few different areas.